everyone, welcome to the Translation Podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce you today to Luciana Danila. Luciana is a seasoned Romanian professional conference interpreter and sworn translator, as well as a language trainer and mentor for both adults and adolescents, with over 10 years of freelancing experience. With a solid academic background in foreign languages and a master's in conference interpreting, she's currently pursuing a master's in cognitive behavioral therapy. Her career is driven by a passion for blending cutting-edge communication strategies with a deep understanding of foreign languages. Luciana's expertise spans over 200 days of interpretation in the Romanian booth, the successful translation of nearly 20 books, and countless opportunities to travel, supporting high-profile events, summits, and conferences. While her translated works remain a proud accomplishment, Luciana finds the greatest fulfillment in her interpreting assignments, where she brings moments of history to life. Welcome, Luciana.
Hello. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you for accepting my invitation.
And thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to speak to somebody from the same industry, from the same country, from the same kind of a background.
And you were the first option in my mind. So I wanted to have this conversation with you for a very long time. So thank you once again for accepting my invitation. And before we deep dive into the topics that we will discuss today, I wanted to ask you, what drew you initially to a career in interpreting? And how has your love for languages shaped your journey?
Well, this is an interesting story, and I can't start with the classic, since I was a child. No, when I was younger, I wanted to be an archaeologist, and all my passion went into that. But somehow, I was a teenager. I needed to make the decision for my future career. And somehow I started looking at what I'm good at, what are my strengths, and foreign languages were always at the top for me. Even though now my working languages are actually Romanian, English, and German, French was the initial language that drew me into this profession because I was dreaming of, being a French interpreter and going to Paris all the time. Well, this didn't happen because I started studying German at the university, and my French, is a bit rusty, a bit more actually, and I don't work with this language. I would say that it was more of a practical decision because I needed to do something with foreign languages because I knew this was my strength and my go-to sort of profession. And within foreign languages, I chose translation and interpretation because it was something quite interesting to me at the beginning. I didn't know exactly if translators are only those who work in translations agencies and so on, or those who work solitary from their own homes translating books. And I wanted to see how this feels like. And then interpretation was something I found, I think I was studying already. I was in my first year at the university, and I had a professor back then whom I absolutely adored. She was a fascinating woman, very diverse. She was a multitude of talents, and she was a conference interpreter. And I always wondered what made her. And then talking to her, she was telling me, I travel a lot, I meet these people, I have to prepare, and I wanted to be like her. So it was more like finding a role model. And wanting to be like that. And then the beauty of interpretation and translation and this kind of work comes from the dynamic pace that we're always following, because no day is like the next one, at least for me. And this keeps me motivated and, into this profession, even now, so many years later. So, yeah.
I love it. That's a great story. And between archaeology and terminology, I see a lot of transferable skills, right? So digging for words, long time learner. I totally see the pattern.
Absolutely. Little detectives we are with languages. And yeah, I suppose the dream of archaeology will someday come true through, I don't know, maybe a book or an interpreting assignment or something like that. So I still like that. But now, yeah, my life is going on a different path.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've translated, Luciana, nearly 20 books, which is impressive to say the least, and one of my personal dreams. What do you enjoy most about translation, literary translation, and how does it differ from interpreting in terms of challenges and rewards?
Well, literary translation is a completely different species, I would say, compared to interpretation. It requires very similar but very different sorts of skills and attention and motivation and so on. First of all, when I translate a book, I always try to get in the author's mind and try to see how that author wanted to present themselves to the world. And I'm trying to do the same through, localization and everything in our culture. It's never just a word for word translation. It's more, it's more of I don't know, adapting whatever you are reading and whatever you're translating to the target culture. And I think this is the most challenging part of it, because you always have to make it sound good, even for your grandma. And this is actually something that I do. Every book that I translate goes to my mother, who's just reading it, and her task is to tell me if this sounds good enough, if this is Romanian enough to make sense for somebody who isn't a translator, for somebody who isn't a professional. Then interpretation, well, this is a whole different world. You have to be always quick on your feet. You have to never think too much, because you're wasting precious time when you have to be to pay attention to whatever the speaker is saying. So I would say interpretation is more of a reading the room and knowing the general terminology of that field, but at a very quick pace and in a very dynamic sort of. It's like when you drink a Red Bull, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, and you're quickly operating at a different speed. This is how it feels to me. You have to activate that little button in your head where you don't have time to think about the insides of one particular word. As long as the meaning is okay, you just go with it. And literary translation feels like reflection process. It's a self-knowledge process in a way, because you understand many things about yourself. Like, I'm good at this, I don't know this at all, I have to research and to do my work. Whereas interpreting is more of you work with what you have and you hope you give your best throughout each assignment.
That's really interesting, and I loved the analogy of drinking Red Bull or pressing a button. Absolutely. And book translation is a very time-consuming task as well. It's you're never satisfied, right, with your first output, second, third. You're always questioning.
Yep.
Did I choose the right words? Does it sound, as you said, Romanian enough?
Yes.
So it is such a complex task. I know that maybe people would think, oh, it's just a book translation. It's probably even more complicating that being in a booth and translating, interpreting real time.
Yes, and I think it's underappreciated in our country, at least. I don't know how the market is abroad, but here usually book translators and translators generally are seen maybe not to be as skilled as interpreters are, because interpretation is like so dynamic, and you gotta wear the fancy clothes and you gotta go to the meetings and you meet the people. But I would say it's not not really true, because for interpreting assignment, first of all, you have a colleague. There's always somebody there in the booth who can help you, who's there for you. When you translate a book and you have a very tight deadline, and the topic is one that is very challenging, for example, children's books, they are hard to translate. They seem to be simple, but they are not. Well, things get harder, and I think we should, praise translators as often and as much as we can.
Mhm. Can you give us a few examples, Luciana, of the books that you translated? And we'll add for sure your social media profile so that our audience can check their titles. And can you tell me what's the favorite book you've translated and what made it special for you?
Yes, absolutely. So I can tell you what I've been translating recently, so to say. I did Alice in Wonderland recently, the newest Romanian version, and this was one of the biggest challenges of my linguistic career, because Alice is full of I don't know, figures of speech. It's full of innuendos. It's full of nuances. It's full of everything you wouldn't understand unless you have the necessary cultural background. And it was such a difficult task translating it into Romanian, because it's so perfectly written in English, and every rhyme and every little poem within the book makes so much sense in English, and the rhythm and the cadence and everything is so well chosen that my task to bring these to life in Romanian was almost a transformative one for me, because I didn't know I could be this creative. I needed to connect and tap into the deepest pits of my creativity to be able to bring something at least similar to the original. So Alice in Wonderland was one of them. Of course, the famous Emily in Paris was something that I did for my younger audience, and it was such a great pleasure. It was almost as if I were walking in Paris, being an interpreter. My original dream, but through translation. But I think my absolute favorite book was The Lady in Gold by Anne-Marie O'Connor. It's the story of the stolen Klimt paintings from Austria during the Nazi occupation. And I needed to do a lot of research for this book, because it's history with some, love drama and a lot of facts and things that actually happened in a way, and I needed to be aware of those and to really get into the history of it and epoch, and to know how people would relate to one another. And it was a wonderful, wonderful book. I recommend you reading it in Romanian or in English. It's a very good book.
Wow, those are some great titles. Alice in Wonderland is for sure top 3 for children worldwide. It is my favorite children's book, by the way. So I'll definitely buy your translation when I get back to Romania. And Emily in Paris, I mean, adolescents or not, who doesn't love Emily in Paris? So that's a great title.
Amazing. Exactly.
So, Luciana, you're both a translator and conference interpreter, which is not a frequent occurrence to have someone working in both fields, and I think that is amazing. How do you combine these two passions of yours, and which one fuels you the most?
A very good question. For me, first of all, it was just a natural to mix the two, because I don't think I get enough satisfaction from just one. Maybe I'm too greedy, but that's just me. I think they feed off each other very well, and I think for me they work with one another really well. Book translation and generally translation helps me go into the deeper levels of the language and understand things or look at things that otherwise might seem superfluous, not necessary, and so on. It's a very creative, thoughtful process. And as I told you before, it's almost like a self-reflection, because I understand with each translation where I am as a translator, as somebody who knows about that culture but who doesn't live in that culture, because I live in Bucharest at the moment. I travel as much as I can for work, for personal reasons, but I don't live in the culture, and I always see new glimpses of, elements that I've never looked at before. And interpreting is, on the other hand, what keeps me in touch with the real world, so to say, because I do a lot of networking and I have to meet a lot of people, and with each assignment, basically, you have to interact with the customer, with the audience, with your booth mate. And as I was saying before, it's much more intense. It's a very reactive kind of sport, interpreting, and you need to be able to do this, critical thinking, and even like a meta-analysis of everything that's going on very fast in real time. And I think translation, on the one hand, gives me the value of something everlasting, because I see the books and I'm proud of them. But at the same time, interpreting gives me the satisfaction of the job well done at the end of each day. I've done it. I'm okay. I survived sometimes, because there are days when you just tell yourself, okay, I survived, when the topic matter is so difficult. But they work well with each other, in my case.
I love that. And I love the fact that, it's a great example. You don't need to choose between the two. I think we have this myth in our profession that you have to choose.
Yes.
Choose from the beginning. Do you want to be an interpreter, or do you want to be a translator? Which is not necessarily the case. We can enjoy both worlds, especially if we're given the opportunity. And there are a lot of examples. I started off as a conference interpreter, right? For many years, I was working in conference interpreting, and now I'm doing translation. So it doesn't mean that you can't change, you can't revisit it. You can, always change your course. I think this is one of the most amazing benefits and perks, if you want, of working in translation and interpreting, that throughout your career you can go back and forth, or you can do both at the same time. So thank you for showing us one of these great examples that you can do both, and you can survive and thrive.
Yes, exactly. Survive and thrive, because sometimes it's like that, sometimes it's like that, but most of the times it's just, fulfilling. And as long as you do what you like and what you love, I don't believe, by the way, in that myth of find what you love and you'll never work a day. No, I think when you find something you love, you'll work even harder and you'll put even more effort into developing yourself, your skills and everything. But as long as you do what you like, this work will feel as self kind of work, working on yourself, developing oneself, and it doesn't feel like a burden. So yeah.
Right, absolutely. I totally agree with that. So we have both worked in Romania in the interpreting world. I wanted to ask you, how has it evolved over the years? Because you've been working for more than 10 years now. I started working as an interpreter as well in 2010, so long time ago. I felt back then that the market was not really ready to work with interpreters, and that not that we weren't valid enough, but I think that the format of the conferences was a bit too old school for people to work with interpreters. I'm sure it has changed a lot in Romania. There's so many conferences, there's so many international things ongoing, which is great. But I wanted to ask you, how has the market evolved, and how do you feel working with the speakers has evolved over time?
Very good question, and I think you are absolutely right. Compared to, let's say, 10 years ago, we definitely have more events here, not just us interpreters, but there are more events organized in the country, international conferences, because Romania has become in time some sort of a, I would say, maybe an Eastern European hub for tech, for even psychology, and we will speak about it maybe a bit later, and many other fields which maybe in the past weren't as common here. And when it comes to interpreters and our profession, I think nowadays we have very few conferences that do not hire interpreters. Like the norm is, I think, nowadays to hire interpreters even though you just have one participant who doesn't understand the language. So this is a very good thing. Another thing that I would mention is the fact that the pandemic has opened a lot of doors for online interpreting assignments and online events, which have stuck in a way, because we see, like, maybe in the pandemic I was working 95% online and only 5 to 10% in person, because there were like the restrictions and you couldn't get close to people and so on. I think now maybe we have 70% in-person events and 30% online or hybrid, which is still good because it allows you to work from anywhere and you don't necessarily have to be in the big cities. We live in the capital city, and here we do have conferences, but there are many interpreters who work in smaller cities of the country who wouldn't have a lot of work otherwise, and I think this helped them a lot and helped us to better integrate this community of interpreters into the modern world. I think nowadays you could actually make a living from being just an interpreter in Romania, as long as you have enough I don't know, maybe I wouldn't say connections, because I wouldn't want to bring a negative connotation to this, but you need to know enough people to be working just as an interpreter without needing the translator's job or the professor's job that many of my colleagues do. I think it's all about leaving yourself an open door wherever you go, and making that client or that agency or that colleague come back to you from a standpoint of, I don't know, professionalism. They should, I think, appreciate, first of all, you as a professional and what you do, and then you as a person. And as long as you are a nice, agreeable person and you have good enough skills in this, I think you can totally make it, and you can live just from this profession, and you can do it well. And one other thing that changed or shaped Romania's interpreting market is the accession to the EU, of course. And after 2007, some interpreters started working as freelance interpreters for the EU bodies, and I think maybe it got more mainstream, our job, and people started to study conference interpreting at the university. We have 2 masters at the moment in the country for this specialty, and I think the new generations of interpreters are really eager to work. I have the opportunity to meet and to often talk to the younger interpreters, to our colleagues, and they are really well prepared, well trained, and absolutely in love with the job. So this can only make us happy and hope for a long life for this profession.
I love that. The fact that you tell me that there is for sure a market for interpreters, and then we can make a living out of interpreting uniquely is definitely something that has changed from 2010 to the latest years. So that is great, and you've actually anticipated my next question. I was just about to ask you if we can make a full-time living out of it. And I love the fact that the new interpreters, the alumni are
Mm-hmm.
well prepared, because
Yeah.
I think that the masters and the interpreting track, there is an interpreting track at the University of Bucharest, the one that I've
Mm-hmm.
graduated, the BA.
Yeah.
And I'm glad to hear that the curriculum is well put together, and they feel prepared for what's to come, because lots of practice is necessary. And I think that today, with the modern technology, you have the opportunities to practice. Plus that there are so many Facebook groups, right, that offer
Yeah.
interpreting practice, and you can study and you can practice at the same time. So you have lots of opportunities now online. It's not like before, you were just thrown in a booth, and yeah, it was much more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you, what about the speakers that come at these conferences? Do you feel that in general they know how to work with interpreters, the way that they structure their speech, the way that they pace their speech, or is it more still like an individual thing?
Well, we have to make the difference here between Romanian speakers and foreign speakers. I think I don't want to sound bad, but I think due to the fact that Romanian interpreting services, sorry, are quite new, and maybe a lot of Romanian speakers haven't, gotten the chance to be exposed to how it is to work with interpreters and translators. It's hard for them to pace their speech and to look at our cues and just to look at us from time to time, because we're there in the booth trying to make signs, like to just slow down for a second, because sometimes when you have to deliver so many figures at summits, for example, where maybe the national security strategy is in place, you have to understand everything and to understand everything properly. On the other hand, when it comes to foreign speakers coming here, I think they are more prepared for the feedback of interpreters, and they actually ask for it. Of course, we've seen Romanian speakers get better and better at delivering the presentation before the event, so that we have time to do some research, or speakers who actually come every time they have the opportunity in the break, and they ask us, am I good enough? Am I slow enough? And the thing is that, even though I mentioned the example with slowing down before, I don't think speed is ever a problem. Speed is almost never an issue, as long as you make sense and you have this mental clarity of where you start and where you want to get to. We'll follow it. It's fine. It's like a logical way of thinking. The problem comes in when you, as a speaker, don't have much to say. Or maybe you do have a lot to say, but you're so anxious and you're reading from a piece of paper some things that weren't written by you. Maybe you have some communication strategist or something. And then you come and say things that don't make sense for you. And you stop in the middle of a sentence and you wonder, is this good? It happens so often. I personally like to always try to educate my clients before the conferences and to tell them what they should expect, what can we do and what can we not. For example, many of our clients expect us to manage the headsets and the devices for listening while we interpret. Like, we are there having our speech, being completely in the flow, and they come to tell us that there's a problem with the headset or with the device. Maybe the technician, the sound engineer, is not there, and they come to us, and this of course stops our flow, and we have to get out and explain. We have to speak to our sound engineer colleagues who are here to assist us. Maybe they are not here at the moment, but yeah. So I think the best thing you can do is to put together a guideline for clients and everybody who is purchasing this sort of services, stating clearly what we are, what we're not, what we can do, what we can't do, especially while speaking. And to start from this, we have to have clear expectations, I think, on the both sides, so that we can have a professional collaboration without nobody being disappointed at the end that, something was not delivered or provided.
I love that. I think it's a great idea to have a guide for customers or for speakers to know how to interact with interpreters, and that takes also some of the edge away from them, because being in front of people is for sure nerve-wracking, and we also want to make it easier for them. And speaking about being in a booth, does anxiety ever go away in a booth? This is again one of the myths about interpreters. How do you do it? How does it work for you, and how do you manage it?
Yes, anxiety is a different beast in the sense of it not ever fully leaving you. I think in time you just learn how to work with it and to better manage it. And I think that's the difference. That's the main difference that I saw between beginners in this profession and experienced, seasoned interpreters, the way they get to manage their anxiety, because you cannot avoid it. Every day you have a different client, every day there's a new setting, every day there could be a new booth, a new colleague, a new sound engineer, and your points of reference, so to say, always change, and you can't really count on nothing but yourself, especially when you go and work on a different market, when you travel somewhere or there's a completely different setting. And I think early on, when you start this career, the pressure can be overwhelming. And I saw many younger colleagues absolutely collapse in the booth because of their anxiety and not because of their preparedness, because they were really, really good interpreters from a technique point of view, from a language point of view, and so on. I think the best way you can work with your anxiety is to prepare for each assignment and to try to build this fake idea of control, even though you're almost never in control of what's going on. You're just the vessel through which they communicate. Preparation and research is key, and I'm not speaking here just about researching the terminology, but rather about researching or doing some online basic Google search of your speakers, their companies. Maybe you find some other videos online. Maybe you find some resource that might help you anticipate how this person would speak, how they would pace their speech, or always asking for documents, for materials beforehand. And I think another aspect that helps with anxiety is to try to work with yourself as a person outside of this profession, because the better you manage anxiety and these feelings like imposter syndrome, which is something so common in our profession, outside of it, and maybe you work with a therapist, or maybe you do mindfulness, meditation, you walk outside in the nature, you have a switch off button for yourself and you know it, you can use it in the booth. You can't just expect to be able to control these things from a professional standpoint when you as a person don't look at it ever. And seasoned interpreters, I feel like they manage their anxiety better, but they do develop other sorts of anxieties, I think, over time. Am I still relevant? Am I still good enough? Am I still working as my younger colleagues do? Because maybe I get tired after the lunch break without a coffee and I feel sleepy because, with age, these things are normal. We get older and some bodily functions are not as fast as they used to. And I think it never leaves us, but we live with it, as we do in almost every other aspect of our lives.
For sure. I definitely see myself in your comment there about the afternoon coffee.
Yes.
So I'm definitely one of those people. I think managing the psychological side of the The job is so important. And by the way, for those of you who are listening to us or watching this on YouTube, I have a great episode with Julia Popescu, who's my friend, and she's a great psychotherapist. It's actually called Psychotherapist Advice for Interpreters, and she talks about some techniques that you can use when you're in the booth and you feel that you have that anxiety, or outside of the room, when you go back home and you really want to relax and take a bit of that edge away. So those type of advice are spot on, and thank you. You mentioned a lot of them. Preparation is for sure the key, and also trusting yourself, right? So trusting yourself that you got this, those words of affirmation, and just being there, being present in the moment without letting go thoughts spiral. So that is really, really important. Outside of the booth and outside of the professional, let's say, skills of an interpreter, what do you think the key qualities of an interpreter are beyond knowing multiple languages? What business skills do you feel are needed for interpreters to survive and thrive? I know that you talk with a lot of students, but also I think that these questions are very useful for seasoned interpreters and translators as well. So what qualities do you think are needed, and what business skills have helped you throughout your career?
Yes, very good question. For the first part, I think the mere knowledge of a language is never going to make you an interpreter, neither a translator nor a language specialist in no way. And I think what makes the difference, that fine line between a specialist and a non-specialist who just speaks the language, is the way you manage to immerse yourself in the culture and to get the communication side of things, and to be very close to this idea of facilitating communication between people, because it's never just about the language. I think an interpreter should be an excellent listener, first of all, and an excellent seeker of deeper understanding and information. Like, you have to be curious, and you have to study a lot, and you have to always be willing to take another course, or to watch another podcast, or to go and speak to people who are maybe going through different sorts of things than you do. I think emotional intelligence plays a crucial role in our profession, because I've heard this so often from my clients. They say that they prefer interpreter X to interpreter Y because of the way of conveying, the same message in a much more adapted tone to the room. For example, I've had some conferences last year on a very different topic than I usually do. It was about human trafficking. I don't do this kind of conferences a lot, and of course you can't just be all smiles and giggles when you do that, and your tone should be very calm, and you should convey empathy with every word you say, because this is how the speakers usually say, compared to a sales conference where you have to be almost hyped up and everything should be awesome, and it's almost as if you were presenting the Eurovision. It has to be that level of energy. And I think that emotional intelligence can help you here. You could cultivate it artificially, but it's simpler if you just can pick up the cues and the tone and the body language and so on. Then I think interpreting can be stressful. So there was a piece of news a couple of years ago saying that it's one of the most stressful jobs in the world, after the one of I think neurosurgeon and air traffic controller. I think we were on the third place or something like this. So I think you should be a very good person at working with yourself. You should be an introspect, and you should be always willing to look into what's going on with you. And as you said before, trust yourself, and this trust is not coming from an empty box. It doesn't fall from the sky. It comes from each time you acknowledge what you do. It can be the smallest thing. It can be just, listening to a translator's podcast if you're a translator and trying to get something out of it. It's like, okay to say, good job, me. I showed up for me and I did something for me. Then on the business side of things, because you can be a really good interpreter but not work ever because it's hard to find clients, I think networking is key. And I think networking is key, especially in our culture, because we're Balkan, Latino, get together, drink together, eat together, do business together sort of people. And there are many galas and events organized here all the time where you can go and just meet colleagues and try to be sociable and try to interact with them. I think you should really have good negotiation skills as an interpreter, and this comes, I think, with experience and with maybe attending some classes or speaking to the network of interpreters that you know, because many times price is the only criterion for choosing a provider, and it's maybe most of the times the worst criterion, because the ones who are willing to lower their prices early on or to start a business partnership with a huge discount are usually those who are striving to find clients and they are striving to make something out of their business. Second of all, I think marketing skills are really important because, okay, I do negotiate well, I am a good person, I'm a good translator, but if you don't know how to promote your work online, because online is and will be the main resource for finding professionals in every field, I don't think you have many chances of getting direct clients and working with them. And then I think you have to have a bit of a mindset. You have to have, of course, a growth mindset, but you have to be an entrepreneur at heart. You have to know how to do business in a way that is beneficial for you long term. It's almost never just about the money. It's about building a reputation, managing your career around that reputation and around your clients, and keeping them happy, because word of mouth is still the best way of doing business and of having, I think, a job in our career. So you have to be a multitude of things to be able to do this profession as a freelancer without the need of an agency and so on. On the other hand, if you're more comfortable like that, and if you do this as a part-time job or as a person who just enjoys foreign languages, you can absolutely work with agencies. That's fine.
Absolutely. And I think that works really well in the beginning too, when you're a beginner and you don't have your pool of direct customers, or you don't know exactly in which order to do all these steps. What would you say, Luciana, for the younger or the newcomers? So what would you say the main steps are to get themselves on the market and start getting customers, clients outside of the work that they do with agencies? What would you say? What would be the first steps they would need to do?
I think first of all, they should look at themselves and create a list with all their pros and what they're good at and what they bring to the market. And sometimes a younger age could be beneficial because you manage to do things when you're very fresh, things that somebody who's twice or three times as old could never do. For example, when I started in this profession, many times I was told, but you're so young, how do you do this? So you're still at the university, right? You're still a student. And I tended to take that personally and I tended to get offended, and maybe sometimes I would say that I was older than I was actually in my ID and my passport, just to pass as being more reliable. I would say that not even this should stop you, and you should create a list of pros and strengths that you can have and bring to the table. And then I think the best thing would be to maybe start with creating a professional LinkedIn account where you maybe write something from time to time from a very professional point of view, what you've read, what you're interested in, or to just follow people who do the same, because you'll be inspired for sure. And in our profession, we have plenty of models of good practices online. And then maybe to get into some form of social media. I honestly don't know if TikTok, the newest trend, is the best one. To be on, I don't know, but I would say that the classic Facebook page would do, because I do get requests from time to time through Facebook. If you don't have money to make your own website, or you just don't want to invest in this because you're at the beginning and you are not interested in this. So I think a LinkedIn profile and a social media page would be absolutely important. And then to have a very, very good CV. To have a CV in Romanian and in English that's ready to go to whomever might be slightly interested in you, where you can state all your work at the university. Maybe you don't have any experience on the real market, but you can highlight all the practical work that you've done as a junior interpreter while studying, and all your skills, all your personal skills, anything that could be important, because sometimes I do need colleagues for one assignment or the other, and I look at those CVs, and many times they're empty. And they're not empty because of people not having done something, because maybe they have a list of jobs, but they don't know how to sell themselves properly, and they don't know how to put out all the good things before the bad things. And again, this is part of maybe our mentality, our culture, but why should I state that I took that opportunity and I had an Erasmus experience for a couple of months abroad? Every student does that. You know what? Not every student does that. And maybe that shows me as a potential employer that you have more than just a knowledge of the language, the culture. You've immersed yourself at least once in that culture, and this gives you a special sort of expertise that not all people have. So yeah, have a strong CV, have a professional page, and also maybe have a social media page, because nowadays without social media, I think it's really hard to be visible. Otherwise, networking in real life, in real world. In the real world that we still live in, even though we're mostly digital nowadays, getting to know people will make a long-lasting impression on them. And if you're a person who is eager to do things and who's actually stating, I'm young, I want to work, could you give me a call when you need somebody? That would open so many doors. It absolutely worked for me. When I graduated, I was so eager to start working and to be in this profession and to be in this field that I told everybody I knew. If you know or hear of any sort of event that would need assistance, I'm here. And this made people remember what I said, and I was actually called, and I started my career right away because I was showing interest in this. So yeah, put it out there. It's not like manifesting it, but put it out there and do some things to achieve that.
Absolutely, make yourself visible. I love that. Speaking of conferences, I wanted to ask you if you could share your favorite conferences as an interpreter, and who are some of the famous speakers you've interpreted for. I know my favorite one from your social media is the one with Gabor Maté, so I was completely blown away. But what are your favorites?
Yes, the conference with Dr. Mate was one of my favorite conferences because he was such a calm and nurturing presence, even for us, the interpreter. So while interpreting, you almost had the impression that you're in therapy yourself and you're working with yourself, and it was wonderful. But yeah, all psychology related conferences are in a way similar because they make you really reflect on yourselves. And I would say that psychology interpreting is one of my favorite areas of expertise because I don't know, it just happened for me to have access into this world and to attend many international summits on schema therapy, trauma therapy, emotional focus therapy, and all sorts of schools that have a subsidiary here in Romania, that it made me really appreciate and absolutely love this client. Then another conference that I would remember, or set of conferences that always have a dear spot in my heart, are those organized by the UN, especially those of the UN High Commissary for Refugees. They're always humanitarian topics, many times about women and children. And I keep on saying that at some point in my life, I would love to look into this direction of helping people in a different way than I do now, and working with children and or women from disadvantaged communities would be one of my dreams. And of course, their conferences are a bliss. Then I can't give you names because I'm under, secrecy. But I can tell you that working with high-level politicians and leaders of state and prime ministers and ministers is almost never as satisfying as it is working with organizations who actually do things for the communities at the lower level. So in spite of the fact that summits, for example, sound very glamorous and they're hard to prepare for, to interpret, to work with some of these clients, it's hard. I would say that going at the lower level and working with NGOs, for example, is one of my favorite sort of things to do because you are making a difference, and I think they see you in the way you are not seen. And sometimes working from the backstage of all conferences, because we're mainly doing simultaneous interpreting in the booth. Nobody sees us, they just listen to us. I think this leaves an emptiness inside because sometimes you want to be seen and you want to be heard more than just being a voice in the headset. And when you go at a lower level, you are seen and heard. Another sort of events that I particularly like are the European Works Councils for companies with subsidiaries in multiple countries. And they organize those European Works Council where basically the employers have the chance to go and freely speak to their bosses and many times request or complain about certain things. And I feel like, again, being part of a movement, being part of something which might lead to a tangible result and could make these people's lives better. So anything surrounding this is my favorite topic. And of course, there are conferences which are difficult. There are conferences which are easier, simpler, and you always get the most satisfaction for those ones that challenge you at least a little bit.
I love that. Great examples. Luciana, what inspired you to pursue a second master's in cognitive behavioral therapy? Again, that's not a very common approach. And how does it connect to your work as an interpreter?
Yes, so my master's in psychology comes as a natural further step after pursuing a bachelor's actually in psychology in the past years. Why psychology? Because I find many connections in terms of communication, helping people, being a bridge between people and whatever they want to achieve. And I only found psychology, I think during the pandemic, when everybody looked inside and saw some things that were maybe unsettled or that needed a little bit of work. And I started questioning back then my career as an interpreter from a future development point of view, because it was so difficult at times to still find pleasure from just working online and not having this very dynamic pace of things that I was used to, that I started searching for an alternative for the long-term future. What could I do if I weren't an interpreter? And then psychology was the closest thing that I was drawn to, maybe because of my attendance to so many conferences on this topic before. I knew some people in the field, and all in all, I found it good enough for me as a maybe secondary profession. This is up to the future. We will see. And then, or tertiary profession, if I might say. And then I started studying psychology, and then I decided to do my master's in CBT, because I saw so many needs and so much focus nowadays in our country on what we've been talking before, anxiety that hinders you from doing so many things in your life, imposter syndrome in our profession that stops you from, making a progress and going to the next step because you feel blocked. And I've always liked to understand how our mind works, especially in high stress settings and in those very new environments that we usually live in as interpreters, as translators as well. And I thought that a career or a master's in CBT will only help me, first of all, manage my own ideas better, not my symptoms, because for that we go to therapy, but to manage our own ideas better of who we are and what we can do and how we can have good, fulfilling lives. And then I started thinking about learning how to integrate this into my professional life, maybe one day or someday, hoping to work with other interpreters and to help them overcome those self-imposed barriers sometimes when it comes to this profession. And then again, it's more of a future kind of job in case, as they all say, AI comes and takes all our jobs. I don't think this will be the case with interpreting. Not soon, actually. Yesterday I read a post on LinkedIn of a fellow interpreter who wrote that a client had a conference. They had organized a conference. They chose AI for the interpreting part, and the AI failed miserably. And they called the interpreter, the human interpreter, at last moment. The interpreter was, of course, busy. He had another assignment. All his other fellow interpreters were busy with another assignment. And the client had an epic fail of an event with the interpreting part with AI. So I don't think this will happen too soon, but for the long term future, I think there might be a way psychology could integrate itself in many professions, from doctors to technicians to very technical professions that need a little bit of relaxation. And in our profession, I think it will be almost a must to know a bit of relaxation techniques and communication techniques and behavioral strategies to help you cope better with what's delivered to you every day. and not on a silver platter, because that rarely happens.
I love that, and I think that's a great transition from your career of being an interpreter to your interest in psychology. But you are spot on. There is a need in the interpreting and translation world. There is this niche of people that really need someone who understands the profession well. It is so particular and so different than what people think about it, and it's much more complex. So I think that's a great step forward. I wanted to ask you, how can from your experience and knowledge, the cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT, help interpreters manage stress, anxiety, and mental fatigue in these, high pressure environments? Can you give us an example of a behavior and how we could manage that?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, I will start with a personal example. I did a CBT technique before my final exam in my master's studies for interpreting, without even knowing. So I was very, very stressed that day, as we all are, of course, when taking important exams. And before sitting the exam, I had some time, and I needed to somehow calm down and maybe regulate my breathing, because I was hyperventilating. It was very, very, tense. And you would see your fellow colleagues coming out of the examination rooms, and everybody was like, "Oh, it was horrible. It was hard. And I needed to somehow detach myself from that and go into myself. And I just took my phone. I had my little headphones with me, and I played a guided meditation for relaxation. It only took maybe 5 minutes or even less, and I just stayed there in the waiting room listening to this. It was something very simple about visualizing the exam and knowing that I will be good at the end, and it's just an exam. My life doesn't depend on it, and something like this. And when I entered the examination room, my professors asked me if I was okay. And of course, I had calmed down. I was okay. And I asked them, "Yeah, why?" And they said, "You look suspiciously calm for an exam." And I started laughing. They started laughing. I told them that I did some meditation. They were very skeptical, and they were like, yeah, meditation. And I think my final exam in interpreting was one of my best performances up to date because of this. And I had wondered back then, why in the world nobody teaches us this? Why don't we go into some techniques before exams, or actually hand in hand with this masters, with this studies, with this profession? And later on, I discovered that what I did back then, it was a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, relaxation technique, which is very, very common. We do these relaxation techniques that could lead to hypnosis, clinical hypnosis, which is another thing that you do. And hypnosis is nothing shamanic or really weird. It's just a deeper state of relaxation that you can do for yourself to relax and unwind. Or you could do guided imagery, which was also what I kind of did, imagining myself at the end of this exam successful and so on. So I think these relaxation scenarios are one useful technique that you can apply on yourself. You can find so many resources online, even on YouTube, or you can record yourself telling yourself, the one from the future, that everything is going to be okay. Or you can be the one speaking from a potential future, saying, "Look, I am here 10 days after this assignment. Everything's okay. I'm still alive. I still have work. I still enjoy a good coffee. Nothing changed." Another thing that you can do from a CBT point of view in the booth is to learn how to breathe. because I feel like many of us don't actually breathe well even when we're speaking. We tend to oversee letting out the air, and we just tense. And when you're in the booth, and especially when you're interpreting, if you don't breathe properly, your brain doesn't get enough oxygen, and you might have those moments of brain fog, or of just losing focus, or never being able to get in the flow, just because of breathing. And it's not a matter of you being prepared. Once again, as an interpreter, it's a physiological thing. So one very useful technique for breathing is the box breathing. Maybe you know, where you inhale for 4, you hold the air for 4, you exhale for 4, and then you keep it exhaled for 4. When your colleague is interpreting, you can do that to ground yourself. And then when you are interpreting, you can leave yourself a note, a post-it, writing, I don't know, breathe, you've got this, or something, to just remember to sometimes look at your body and listen to your body. Because through behavior, we can, of course, impact the way we think and the way we associate what happens professionally to what happens in the body. Every time, many interpreters tell me that they are very tense in their body, and they feel like they go on autopilot at the beginning of a day, and they switch off at the end of the day, or the next day they go home carrying all this tension. And many times I think it's because of the lack of breathing, honestly, and the lack of proper technique. So there are many things you can integrate from CBT, and that's the beauty of it. It's very practical. It's very it's a self-explanatory process. You learn a couple of things, and then you can go a long way and help yourself whenever you need, and also help the others.
I love that. Do you see yourself integrating CBT into your work as a mentor or trainer? By the way, I would totally buy that program if you ever think about designing it. And how do you think it could improve interpreters' performance?
Yes, definitely. This is one of my first dreams, so to say, or my short-term dreams, to start integrating CBT into the profession before integrated it maybe in a future profession as a psychotherapist. I'm still thinking about that. Let's see how the time is and how the world is evolving. First of all, I think working with younger interpreters and translators, because this is where I usually teach and do mentorship, is a lot about self-trust, and a lot about building resilience, and a lot about looking into the soft skills of this profession, rather than just at the things you learn at the university. I think one of the most important things I would do is to, besides those techniques that I mentioned before, and learning how to do this for yourself and to self-help, is to try to speak more about mental illness and burnout with them early on, because unfortunately, in a profession that requires permanent contracts, permanent work, you need to work to be paid. Nobody's paying you unless you do something, you perform a service. Interpreting cannot really be delegated. Of course, you can have your own agency and your own interpreting company, but that does not necessarily mean that you don't work. Sometimes you work even more because it's your own business, it's your baby, and you want to cater for it and to help it grow. And I think most of us run from 9-to-5 jobs and end up working nonstop. And I think it's very important to speak about burnout, because unfortunately I have many examples around me, and the symptoms that lead to burnout, and most importantly, stress management. Stress management seen from a professional point of view, that teaches younger people, and not only younger people, also seasoned interpreters who never looked into this aspect, how to detach a little bit. Yesterday, I read another post. I don't remember the source, but I can give you later on if you want to put it somewhere. Romania has the lowest work-life balance ratio in the EU. So we are somewhere far behind compared to the other countries because of this sort of mentality that we have, that it's bad to rest, it's bad to just stay and not do anything, it's bad to take a day off in the middle of the week. Maybe you worked at the weekend as an interpreter, because that sometimes happens, and you need to take Tuesday and Wednesday off. It's really frowned upon, I think, in our culture, and I would like to speak about this more. And the tools, the actual tools that I was mentioning before, the relaxation scenarios, the breathing, keeping a journal, writing letters to yourself of appreciation at least once a year. At the end of each year, thank yourself for being there and for doing what you did, because nobody else would have done it better than you with your resources and everything you had. So all these things could be integrated in a very, very easy way, as long as somebody looks into the specificities of our profession. Because as you said, it's a niched market still, and a lot of interpreters do go to therapy or they take care of themselves, but not in a way that is really specialized for them. Or I think somebody who is not in this profession, who is not in this whirlpool of feelings and events and invoices and clients and everything that you have to manage at the same time, doesn't really understand. And who knows, maybe in the future this could be a direction.
Absolutely, I love that. Luciana, this was really great. I truly enjoyed this conversation with you, from translation to interpreting to your interest in archaeology, psychology. I feel this episode was so rich in information. Thank you so much for everything you shared this episode. I'm sure it will be useful not only for the newer interpreters, but also for the seasoned ones, and for those of us who are interested in psychology, and those who are listening to us and wondering, what do we do? How does our profession look like? How does our day-to-day look like? So I think this is really interesting for them as well. I'm looking forward to maybe one program on CBT, on stress management, on burnout. I think this is really important, and having someone who knows the profession so well and trained in these techniques, and helping the group, to help the tribe, let's call it, to get better and manage their stress levels better, is amazing. So I'm looking forward to welcoming you maybe to a new episode where you will talk about these techniques, if you feel you want to. Do you want to add anything to the episode today? Is there something that you wanted to share and we haven't had the chance to maybe talk about it?
Thank you so much first of all, for all your kind words and appreciation. I must tell you that I feel really, really relaxed and really good talking to you, and it didn't feel at all like talking for a podcast. It felt like talking to just a friend who shares the same idea. So thank you so much, Daniela. And of course, whenever you invite me, I will for sure say yes, because it's important to get those messages out there and to start talking about the non-professional side of the profession. Because as I was saying before, we are very, very trained, extremely skilled, super expertised, and then we're miserable from time to time, and we're trying to prevent that with each podcast, with each post, with everything that we do. And if I would add one more thing, well, I would just say everybody listening or watching to never give up to a dream or to an idea just because somebody else did it before. we still go out to eat at restaurants, even though we have food at home. And every new business idea and every new business opportunity or every career starts somewhere. And even though you've never done this and you want to start, or maybe you've done this but you want to do it better for you, for your family, or for your tribe, as you said, there's always a starting point and there's always something that changes in just a moment, and you start having a new perspective. So stay curious, stay motivated, and just trust yourself, because this is the most important, I think, step towards a better life, to be good with yourself. Thank you so much, Daniela. I really, really loved this talk.
Me too. Thank you so much, Luciana. I will add Luciana's profiles to the video description, so please make sure to check them out and to connect with her on social media and on LinkedIn. If you like this video, please subscribe and share it with the audience. We would love that it reaches as many people as it can. Thanks.